And joining us now is the Democratic Majority Whip, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. He is chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and we welcome you back to the show. I guess we'll start with where we started off this hour, Senator, if we could. Just what do you make of the classified documents, now a situation with former Vice President Mike Pence? What's going on here?
Well, it's a good question, and I wish I knew the answer, but I will tell you, when it comes to members of Congress and classified documents, we go through an elaborate, careful process even to read one of these pieces of paper. And the thought of keeping them on our desk to get around to later or taking them home or out of the office is unthinkable at this level.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what has happened here. But there's a clear distinction, which I think we should make here. We have three principles now, former President Trump and Vice President Pence and President Biden, where we found these documents in places they never should have been. The question was, how did each of these principles react? And the reaction by former President Trump was one of obstruction, basically saying to the archives and others, I don't have them, what I have are mine, I can keep them, and it's none of your business. The other two appeared to make a much different approach, starting with President Biden, who invited the federal government in to take a look themselves, and to his surprise found even more documents.
Yeah. So, this has been a shock to me as a former member of the Armed Services Committee that saw classified documents. I've even talked on the show about having classified briefings from like 1997 and 1998 that I just would never repeat. There's a mindset for members of Congress. And what I'm now starting to hear is, well, they handle classified documents differently at the White House
than
they do in Congress. So, well, it's just different. But, Senator, it seems to me it shouldn't be different. It seems to me when I was in the House, we took care of classified documents pretty well. Shouldn't the White House emulate what Congress does?
Certainly, because we are told, and I'm convinced it's true, that the origin of some of these documents is very sensitive. We can have people in foreign countries who are literally giving us information for the benefit of the security of the United States who risk their lives to do it. And we shouldn't be careless in the documentation that comes from their cooperation. We need to be thoughtful about it if we want to keep these sources safe and helping the United States.
What do we do about guns? Chicago obviously has had an epidemic of gun violence for years. So many of the guns that are used were not purchased by the people who committed the crimes with the guns. There's a huge black market out there for it. You look at California, there's a place where they have pretty tight gun laws. And yet we've had two mass shootings out there just in the past couple of days. What's the next step on guns?
I'll say two things about that. First, we had the killing of a police officer last year in Chicago. Her name was Ella French, and she was killed with a gun that had been the subject of a straw purchase, which meant that a felon, convicted felon, took on his girlfriend our personal friend, over to Indiana, purchased a gun for that felon, who then used it to kill this wonderful police officer. There was an outpouring of feelings among law enforcement, but everyone in the city of Chicago over this terrible straw purchase death. We need to have stronger laws in that regard. The measure that was enacted recently, the Community Safety Act, moves in that direction. We need to do more. Secondly, our governor has led an effort in the Illinois General Assembly to pass an assault weapon ban. It is interesting because we now have a reaction from sheriffs around the state to say they won't enforce it. So we're going to be the ground zero for this debate in the weeks and months to come. But having seen the damage, the violence that came about in the 4th of July shooting at the parade in Highland Park, Illinois, where a fellow discharged 83 rounds in 60 seconds, this is unthinkable. Anybody who believes that's what the Founding Fathers had in mind historically is just off base completely.
Senator Durbin, good morning. Jonathan Lemire, you have spoken. We want to circle back to the classified documents matter. You have spoken, very strenuously about how serious this matter is, no matter what party the person belongs to who shouldn't have the documents it is found to do have. And in fact, over the weekend, you gave an interview about President Biden. You said he should be, quote, embarrassed by the situation. And you said that anyone who has information who shouldn't, it diminishes the stature of any person. So I want to get you to just expand upon that a little bit, your thoughts about that, particularly with the current occupant of the Oval Office, and also what can President Biden do now to make right in this situation?
Well, I think that President Biden has taken the right steps. He's opened his office. He's opened his home. He has basically called all the appropriate federal agencies and said, find what you will. I'll stand responsible for it. What a contrast with Donald Trump, who fought his way in court all the way up to an FBI search of Mar-a-Lago to find if there were more documents than were reported. But having said that, the bottom line is obvious. If these documents are secret and classified and have important, sensitive information, they should never be treated the way we've seen, either by Vice President Pence and his staff, the president, or former president.
Senator, back to guns. You just said with regard to the straw purchase of the handgun that killed a Chicago police officer that certain elements of legislation have been made in order to correct that, and you said it moving it in the right direction. It moves in that direction. What does that mean, moves in that direction? This country sits there, a vast majority of people, against the open purchase of handguns that are so available in this country. What does moves in that direction mean?
The problem we had was straw purchases were against the law, but they were characterized as a bookkeeping mistake by the gun shop and the purchaser. And so they were treated as misdemeanors and with such low penalties and punishment that they were hardly ever prosecuted. Now this agreement that Senator Chris Murphy and Senator Cornyn and others entered into makes it a more serious offense, as it should be. But we need to keep an eye on this. This notion that I can find a friend or girlfriend to make a purchase when I'm illegal under the eyes of the law and making the same purchase needs to be taken as seriously as the theft of a gun. And in this circumstance, I mentioned to you earlier, a wonderful young woman, a member of the Chicago Police Department, lost her life because of it.
Yeah. Senator, I want to talk to you about another issue and ask you a couple of questions. Top executives from the ticketing industry were on Capitol Hill yesterday answering questions about the fiasco that happened 2 months ago when Ticketmaster was unable to handle the unprecedented demand for tickets to Taylor Swift's upcoming tour. Angry fans complained about the problem during the pre-sale, including being unable to get the website to load and being unable to access available tickets, even with a pre-sale code. Republican and Democratic lawmakers on the Judiciary Committee grilled the ticket executives, showing their inner Swifties. Are you a Swiftie?
Yeah, of course I am.
In the process. Take a look.
We all are.
And to have a strong capitalist system, you have to have competition. You can't have too much consolidation, something that unfortunately for this country, as a ode to Taylor Swift, I will say, we know all too well.
May I suggest respectfully that Ticketmaster ought to look in the mirror and say, I'm the problem. It's me.
I think it's a nightmare dressed like a daydream. I don't think we ought to go there.
A few million Taylor Swift fans would respond, this is why we can't have nice things.
Karma's a relaxing thought. Aren't you envious that for you it's not? That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Jeez.
Oh, my God.
Keep
that was
Taylor
funny.
Swift lyrics out of your mouth.
No, that was funny. Come on.
Funny.
The president of Ticketmaster's parent company, Live Nation, blamed the incident on bots, which he said are designed to snatch up tickets before they ever make it to consumers.
While the bots failed to penetrate our systems or acquire any tickets, the attack requires to slow down and even pause our sales. This is what led to a terrible consumer experience, which we deeply regret. We apologize to the fans. We apologize to Ms. Swift. We need to do better, and we will do better.
Senator, I have no Taylor Swift lyrics for you. It's just a question. The question is, what can be done with this growing monopoly? This is something that, my gosh, I think it was Pearl Jam took them on like 15 years ago, lost. It doesn't matter how big and powerful you are. People take these these entities on and they lose because they're monopolies? What can be done?
First, let me make a point. I hope it is clear. This was a bipartisan approach to this issue. You hardly see a glimmer of light between members of the House, of the Republican and the Democratic side of this Senate committee. Our committee has tackled this, and I'm glad they have, because what we've seen here in the Ticketmaster and Live Nation merger was the creation of a monopolistic entity that they control 70 or 80% of all the ticket sales and venues and major artists in this country, is at the detriment of the performing artists as well as consumers across America. I tip my hat to Amy Klobuchar and Mike Lee, Democrat and Republican, who are leading this effort to push for competition. It's long overdue, and our committee is going to lead the way in this effort. I thank them for their sponsorship of this committee meeting yesterday. There will be more.
And what we're talking about monopolies, I'm curious what your reaction is to the government's action against Google. Long expected, but finally yesterday the shoe dropped.
Long overdue. Let's be very honest about it. We've seen this on Capitol Hill, and we've certainly seen it in Washington. These entities have become so big, so powerful, so politically fluent that very few people will tackle them. Once again, the Senate Judiciary Committee, working with Senator Klobuchar and others, have made this a major initiative, and we're going to continue to. We have to have accountability in social media.
Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Dick Durbin, thank you very, very much. We appreciate your being on this morning.
Thank you so much. Can I ask him a quick question?
Yeah.